I often get asked what's the most important thing when you're starting out on three-finger style or Scruggs banjo, and I invariably say it's having a solid right hand and a good understanding of using the rolls on your banjo. And the reason for this is if you're not playing melodic or single string, you're playing essentially a bunch of patterns with your picking hand, which are known in bluegrass as rolls. Now, legally, these are actually arpeggios, because anytime you take a chord, like a G, and you break up the notes individually, you have what's known as an arpeggio in most forms of music. The hillbilly bonics of that is rolls. So essentially, when you start out practicing your rolls, there are four principles you want to be aware of. Number one, you really need to think about having a solid base. So the way I like to explain it is when you're shifting rolls, though each roll is like a different gear. So I had my square roll was a gear, and forward reverse was another gear, and forward was another gear. So for those gears to not grind, we need to have a motor which is solid and doesn't wiggle around. So in other words, it is very important that you have your bracing fingers, which is usually taught in traditional bluegrass banjo anyway. So the bracing fingers would basically be either your pinky or your ring or both. I do both, but there's great pickers that only do pinky, and there's some pickers that only do ring. So that's up to you. But you do have to have some kind of a kickstand to be able to get, really like speed and accuracy without your hand wobbling around. So having a solid base is number one. So make sure you're bracing your hand before going further in this video. The second quality of rolls that's so fascinating is that they're non-stop. So if we're playing a square roll and we switch to a forward reverse, we're not going to do this. We connect them continuously. And so basically they're like Legos. They flow together. So when you practice your rolls, think about billiard balls rolling across a pool table. They're just smooth and continuous. Very important. Thirdly, we need to have an even tempo. So if you're practicing one roll and you switch to the other one, but you slow down a bit because it's a bit more complicated, that defeats the whole purpose. Now we're grinding gears again. So you really want to make sure you practice with a metronome or some kind of backing track when you're doing these drills. So here's my beat. I'm going to switch right here. Again. So I'm making them all even, like I took a rolling pin and smushed over all the rolls and made them the exact same tempo. Even tempo is very important. Finally, when you're connecting the rolls, there's a principle that the last note of the first roll becomes the first note of the next roll. And I know that sounds more confusing than a drunken sushi chef, but basically what that means is if I'm playing a forward roll, so my forward roll is going to look like this. And as you can see, the last note of that roll is a middle string, right? So let's say I was going to switch to the backwards roll, which starts on the middle string. I'm going to have that middle string serve as both the last note of my forward roll and the first note of my backwards roll. So watch this. I'm going to show you what we don't want to do. We don't want to do this. We don't want to do this. Doubled up. We do want to do this, forward roll. And then backwards. Forward. And backwards. So as long as you have a steady base for your right hand, you're playing non-stop, you're not pausing, you have an even tempo locked in by a metronome, and you're not doubling up notes, now you're ready to practice roll switching. So the first roll switch we're going to practice is the forward roll, which in my system we play on strings 5, 3, and 1. okay? And we're gonna, if you look at the tablature, you'll see we basically have the forward roll as 8 notes and the back roll as 8 notes. Now the disclaimer here is this is just because I didn't want to use 2 pages of tablature for every example. You can actually go as long as you want on any of the rolls in this lesson and then switch. I'm showing you the minimal version so we can fit it on the screen and discuss it. For example, apply this principle to all the other roll switches we do in this lesson. On the tab, it looks like this. Switch. Switch. When in reality, I can go forward roll as long as I want. I'm thinking about what to make for dinner, yelling at the dog, wondering where my remote is. Now I switch to backwards. Same thing, go as long as I want. So I'm going to count to 4 and we're going to practice the basic switch from forward roll to backwards roll as written on the tab. 1, 2, 3, 4. Forward. Backwards. Forward. Backwards. Forward. Backwards. Forward. Backwards. After you get that smooth, go ahead and practice it on your own and go forward for as long as you feel like it. And then when you end up on that first string, make that the switching point to go to the reverse and keep going backwards as long as you want, back and forth till the cows freeze over. Okay, for our second roll switch exercise, we're gonna go forward roll, backward roll, and then square roll. Just one of those bad boys on the end. You'll notice on the last note of the backwards roll in the tab that I altered it to make the last note be a second string, when normally in the flow it would be a third string. This is an example of the Legos-like quality of Scruggs playing. You can stitch any 2 rolls together if you change a note now and then, because if I had left that a third string, we would have crashed into that third string at the beginning of the square roll. So that's what's happening there, rather clever. So I'm going to count to 4, and we're going to play this together just as written on the tab. 1, 2, 3, 4. Backward. Square. Forward. Backward. Square. Forward. Backward. Square. Forward. Backward. Square. Remember, that's just the beginning version. The adult version that I want you to do is go for that forward roll as long as you want, as long as you're smooth into a metronome. And then when you want, when that middle finger hits that first string, we're going to switch. Here's my backward. At some point, after I hit that first string, I'm going to grab the square roll. Here I go. Square. Nice. I can hang out here as long as I want. It's my God-given right as a banjo player. Back and forward. Backwards. Square. You'll have more fun than a monkey with a banana machine once you get these hooked together. It's super cool. Now we have one of my personal favorites, the square roll. In this instance, we're doing 2 of them. Into the forward reverse roll. Which, if any of you have taken my Zoom lessons, you'll know that I like to break that down to the nth degree. It's actually 2 rolls, a forward and a hybrid backward. But it's known as the FR, or the forward reverse. So we're going to go 2 square rolls and then right into the forward reverse roll. with me after the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Square, forward reverse. Square, forward reverse. Square, forward reverse. Square, forward reverse. You know the drill. Keep it up. It's kind of hypnotic. On and on. Once again, ad nauseum, you can do each of those as long as you want. I can go square. I can literally change channels on Netflix, have an argument with my roommate, and then, oh, darn, I'm supposed to switch. Here we go. Forward reverse. And that kind of mentality is what's going to come up later when you start learning how to arrange songs in Scruggs style, like I talk about in my Scruggsifying lesson called Arranging in Scruggs Style at JamAlong.org. You should check it out. And so that's where you take a basic melody like Coming Around the Mountain, and we connect those rolls and add some melody notes and maybe a little left-hand ornaments, and we get this. Such a magical skill, and you can't do that unless you can smoothly switch from roll to roll. That's why this is such a great lesson for you. Finally, we have some rolls called alternating bass rolls. And what these are is whenever you have an even roll with 4 notes, like the square roll, there's no reason we have to only hit the 3rd string when we start out. What if I started out on my 4th string? You can do either or. Here's the standard, there's the low string. And it creates a nice galloping sound when you go back and forth. Here's the square roll with alt bass or alternating bass. You can also do that with the forward reverse roll. We can play it standard. And now I'm going to switch over away from the 3rd string to the 4th string. So this next switching drill involves an alternating bass square roll and an alternating bass forward reverse roll. Don't try to say that, just play it. And I'm going to connect this roll, just like shown on the tablature on the screen, to this roll. Okay? With me after the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Square. Forward reverse. Square. Forward reverse. Square. Forward reverse. Square. You get the drill. That's really handy for Scruggsifying because lots of melodies have that combination of notes. If I was arranging Worried Man Blues, I'd probably use that same roll sequence. Super handy. Finally, when you think about, you've got 3 fingers, 5 strings in any number of combinations, it's literally infinite. So there's a lot of variations to these rolls that I couldn't possibly cover in this lesson. I do have a lesson at JamAlong.org called Hybrid Rolls, and that covers tons of really cool variants of the standard rolls. Go ahead and pick that up, and I'll throw in a free Zoom lesson with myself. But basically, the forward roll variant that I'm going to show you in this lesson on the tablature there, instead of the strings going 5, 3, 1, we're going to go 3, 2, 1. So if you just roll that over and over and over again, you're just going to basically get strings 3, 2, 1. Okay? However, for the purposes of this drill, we're going to do it in an 8-note segment, which will sound like this. Then we're going to go to that square roll variant we just learned. Yeah. Yes, with the alternating bass. And finally a forward reverse roll variant where we stay off the 5th string. So instead of this, it's going to be this. Very cool roll, that one, because it's got a syncopated rhythm on that 3rd string. It's actually creating what's known as a clave, or a 6/4. So if I put a melody to that note, a lot of fun could be had there. So after 4, I'm going to do the forward variant, the square variant, and the FR variant. Follow me along. 1, 2, 3, 4. Forward. Square. Forward reverse. Forward. Square. Forward reverse. Forward. Square. Forward reverse. Forward. Square. Forward reverse. You know the drill. Keep it up. And so on. What comes next after this? Well, there's 5 areas I like to explore with my students, and first is more combinations. We just showed a very small batch of possible roll combinations. You can combine them any which way you choose. And that's not even talking about the hybrid rolls, okay? So let's say we have a forward roll, and we do the variant. And then we do a Bela Fleck hybrid roll, that's and we switch on alternating bass. We get this. So many combinations out there. Basically, you want to think of it like you have the magic 8-ball, and you just pick any 2 rolls and see if you can stick them together without repeating notes and without stopping or slowing down. Next, I like to talk about adding what I call LHO, or left-hand ornaments. So anytime you're switching rolls, let's say you're doing square to forward reverse, you can add the standard slides, hammers, and pulls. So for example, a standard slide is 2 to 4 on the 3rd string. So on our square roll, we can do 2 of those. Or how about I do it on the forward reverse instead? Or on the forward reverse, I slide, I come down, I do a 3 to 2 pull off on the 3rd string, another great Scruggs cliche, and I get this. A lot of this stuff is covered in my Arranging in Scruggs Style lesson, as well as the basic Scruggs licks lesson at JamAlong.org, so you can start to learn how to put these things together. Finally, we want to start using Scruggs licks. And as I mentioned, I have several lessons on Scruggs licks. Just go to the search bar and look for it at JamAlong.org. But basically, you want to do the same thing with your licks as you do with the rolls. You want to be able to switch from them effortlessly. So if I have a G lick and a C lick, I want to be able to go back and forth. Now we're cooking with Crisco. Now we're playing actual Scruggs banjo on the fly. Finally, I'd love to work with you on the banjo matrix, and that will take some actual Zoom lessons with me because there's no way you can model this after any one player. So once again, look at the links below. Contact me, mention this video for a free Zoom lesson with me, and I'll go over the banjo matrix, which is combining the roll switching, the left-hand ornaments in the Scruggs style with the melodic style. Back to your rolls, to the single string style. Back to the rolls, melodic. Back to the rolls. Because the good players are able to do that, switch from style to style during a song. So I might be playing 9-pound hammer, Scruggs style, single string, back to rolls, want the power to do that, but it all starts with learning how to have a solid motor and switch from any roll to any roll at any time. Happy rolling. I look forward to hearing from you.